Okay, as with all of these, we record the conversation later so people can have as full participation as possible. Sunday night, tomorrow night, we'll repeat this and people will be able to not only hear Chakravarthy talk about the Sola cooker, this new wall mount, window mounted cooker, but also hear any thoughts that you have, and he can respond. He was going to try to make it in. I am not seeing that he's logged in yet, so he may not be able to make it. But I did have a very extensive email exchange with him, and so let's just start with questions. Any questions about the cooker or any thoughts you have about the wall-mounted, window-mounted? Have you considered it if you make cookers? And also, it sounds like it's a three-functioning unit. You know, drying, cooking, and then the heating of a room, which is nice. But anyway, so what questions do people have? Roger.
Luther, this looks like a great idea to me, very interested in it. But the question I have is the question I always get with my cookers, which is how fast does it cook? What is the speed of the thing or the power, if he's got any ratings for power? And what's the maximum temperatures he's been able to reach? I realize it can't be changed and it can't be maximized for the sun because the sun is just there. But what has this reached in terms of temperature and speed?
Sure. He did mention that rice in the summer will cook in an hour and a half, and he's talking about he talked about 4 liters worth of food in the cooker. I'm going to guess that that's, you know, could be 4 tiffin pots arranged horizontally as it is, because he's limited the airspace, because that's one thing that they recognize really quickly with this type of cooker. The less air that you have to bother to heat, the pot's going to gather more of it. And the polycarbonate, of course, with the 2 layers, they've got that heat trap effect. He also mentioned, and this one I'll have to clarify with him, he said the heater doesn't get beyond 70 to 80 degrees Celsius. That might be the internal air temperature, but obviously if rice is cooking, it's got to be pretty close to boiling, and possibly boiling, although rice can cook without having to be at a full boil. That's what I understand, but I'll make a note of that question for him too, so we can pass that on.
Okay.
Other questions? I know
Well,
many.
I have another one.
Sure,
It occurs to me. The unique thing about this cooker is that it relies mostly on insulation rather than reflection. And that strikes me as to ask whether anybody maybe has considered creating an insulated, maybe even a vacuum dome that you just set over a pot on the ground, where, and as we all know, a black pot on the ground will just heat up, but it loses temperature rapidly to the air. But if you were to insulate that severely with a vacuum dome, you cook that way, and then you don't have to worry about reflection and facing the sun and all the rest of it.
Oh, that's a great question, and I see we do have one fellow, Kurt Newbeck. If you could chime in, because I vaguely recall when we met that you had gotten a sheet of two double glass thing that was actually evacuated. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are. Good morning, everyone. And yes, Lucy, you are remembering that. In fact, just today, and last night and today, I'm working on building like on my next generation or my next round of experimental box cookers, and that's one of the options that I will be testing. I was able to get from China some 12 by 12 inch, so 30 by 30 centimeter evacuated glass. So 2 layers of glass with a very thin vacuum in between. So we'll see how that performs. And then I'll try double glaze, triple glaze too, but by comparison. But that's one option to answer your question.
Sure. So theoretically, you could have 6 or 8 of them and turn them into a box, perhaps, or even as they decided to go horizontal to limit the amount of air that it needed to bother to heat up. It was, try to focus all the sunlight on the pots. I would guess they'd be able to make what you have in like vertical strips, like 12 by say 3 inches, or and then some silicone caulk would probably take care of that. That
Yeah.
would
So
really, yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, the issue is it's very expensive right now because it's not really commercially available, or it's very a limited available only in very limited quantities. So at the moment, double or triple glazing, I'm sure, is going to be far more cost effective. May not be quite as efficient and as far as the thickness goes, but chances are the triple glazing is going to be, it will perform just as well as my guess. But obviously that's what I'm going to test. So you could. The issue, if it's not clear to everyone, every time you add a pane of glass, you lose about 10%. So even you could triple, quadruple glaze if you wanted to, but because you get a lot more insulation, but you lose a little bit of sun getting through with each pane. So that's why you don't just put 3 or 4 layers, or you don't shoot for R10 of insulation, which would be like 10 layers of glass roughly. So that's the answer to that one.
Sure. I had a nice visit with Gordy Bishop in Barstow, who for 30 plus years worked in the solar thermal electric industry. It was solar thermal evacuated tubes that had a certain kind of oil in it that would hit 600-700 degrees Fahrenheit, 300 plus Celsius, and then that would create steam and of course generate electricity. And he it was so into it that he's kept a few of the old models. The unique thing about them is they're the glass tube around a metal tube with the oil, and then a bladder at the end that actually they can evacuate it and then unevacuate it if there's like a break, and so they can fix it and then put a new steel tube in with the oil and then re-evacuate it. So and when I talked to him, the question I had was, do you even need the vacuum? If you have just that tube, you at least have a heat trap for that tube. And with reflectors, you would imagine that would really help to up the temperatures. I'm guessing I know for myself, once I get this the Sola cooker, this through the window cooker, I'm going to put reflectors around it and see what happens. Us solar cooking people can't leave well enough alone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You would definitely heat, because you can heat up the bottom. You got reflectors below it, and add a lot more heat to the bottom. And especially if there's some kind of a collector plate on the bottom, it will definitely make a difference to the heat there. The other thing I thought I'd mention is, just as an observation, he said that he wanted to reduce the air volume, which is a factor. But the other thing that they're really doing, when you reduce the volume, reduce the amount of skin. In other words, the volume, the surface area through which you're losing heat. So they might think of it as reducing the volume of air that you're heating, but you're not really trying to heat. Well, you are trying to heat the air, but it's really the losses that you're limiting by making the volume smaller. Sure.
Okay. One other reflection on that quickly, and then I think Mark has a hand up there. The Ivan Yalhonitsky has a tube, but there's no glass, there's no vacuum. It's just a double layer of aluminum that's riveted together, and then he has a massive reflector, and that cooks bread as quickly as any gas range. It'll cook several loaves of bread and pastries for the students at their complex there in Lesotho. So sometimes we don't even have to think of glass or glazing and so forth. But anyway, so yes, I saw a hand up there. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, one question for you is, will you have an example of that cooker at the ACES conference? That's a quick question. You don't know that yet?
No, it's I don't know when they're gonna be able to. He's gonna get me the first in the line, he says. But
okay. And
that's September. Who knows? Yeah.
So that cooker has a lot of exposure. It's almost like a dome in a sense, as far as it has both where the sunlight is hitting it and also where the sunlight's not hitting it. So it has heat loss in all around. And Kurt's design just would give more light coming in and less exposed heat loss potentially. But one thing I wonder is, with the multiple layers of glass, are those low iron glass layers? And if so, where can somebody get small quantities of low iron tempered glass for these kind of things?
Yeah, so the low iron will, so for those not familiar, regular glass is, if you look at the side of it, it's kind of greenish, and that's the iron in there. So they also make what's called low iron glass, which is less green. Therefore it's a little clearer. It's like, instead of 90% transmission, it's like 92 or 94, something, or a small percentage, but still, if you can get it, you'll get a little bit better performance, especially if you're doing multiple layers. So it wouldn't have to be low iron, but if you can get your hands on it. So to answer your question, glass manufacturers as an architect, I can get them. I don't know if you just call up the glass manufacturer and ask them, can I get one of your 12 by 12 samples? Because that's what they do. Nearly every building in the country and around the world, when you're planning a building, you call the manufacturer and ask them for different samples to show the client and hold up to the window and things, to the sunlight and things like that, to select which glass you want in that building. Commercial buildings, not so much residential. So glass manufacturers, 12 by 12 inches is very readily available.
But so bigger things. I used to make collectors, and we made larger, 4 by 6 or larger glass. And at that time, the better stuff was about 92% transmissive, and float glass being 86. And if you do the math, you multiply, 2 layers, it diminishes the input pretty readily.
Right.
Right. That way.
Yeah.
But love to see your next generation.
I think I might have posted on the Solar Cookers World Network the 5 or 6 through the wall window mounted cookers that I'm aware of that are out there. And I think it's got a big future, especially given their focus on the high rises. It was just a pure coincidence in 2020 when I was at Console Foods, and these guys from Madrid were going, well, we can't do it. We're on the 20th floor up here and whatever. And it's like, well, if you have an equator facing window, yes, you can. And it just opens up the world. And I don't know if I kept it in when I did a little editing, but we have the largest public housing complex in Minneapolis is 3 blocks from our house, and 500 units on about a third of a city block. And it's set up so that 2/3 of the apartments get at least 3 or 4 hours of sun, maybe in the morning, maybe 8 hours for the equator facing side, or another 3 hours in the afternoon for the other side. So literally 2/3 of those residents, if they let them put it out their window, which they probably don't. Kurt could probably answer this as far as architecture and requirements. Sometimes they have the office towers. Those are not windows you can just crank out to vent. But you'd think that'd be a possibility for new construction too, to be able to say, hey, have a space for that sort of thing. And as he pointed out, window mounted air conditioners, they're probably not as common as here, but they're getting more and more common in India. So yes.
Well, I had a question that I'm going to look at this year, because I'm very frustrated with May gray and June gloom. Are there any solar cookers that anybody's made so far that will work in the low sun environment, and what is the lowest in which it will work? Because I have a 5,000-foot layer up above me of clouds for 2 months.
Well, good question. The Solar Cooking United Kingdom group, they really focus on the vacuum tubes. And they will make the statement that if it's really light overcast, or you can kind of make out where the sun is, they can still cook. It'll take longer, but it'll build up enough heat through that. And I can say, just from having solar panels, I'll have a real thin layer of overcast, and my 6 kilowatt panel array will still crank up 600 watts, maybe even up to a kilowatt if it's a thin enough cloud cover. So the energy is coming through. Otherwise, the only questions like for low sun, like in the morning, or that fellow that was at Console Foods in 2020 who cooked in the Yukon territory, 57, 80 degrees, 60, 70 degrees, whatever latitude. He just has a bigger parabola to grab as much of that lower sun that's going through more atmosphere and so forth. But that's my understanding is in England, especially they're at the 57th, I think. Are they 57th parallel?
Yes.
They're north of us anyway. They, of course, the London fog. I mean, we know all about that. So they say that's how they do it. One of the guys has 3 of them mounted just outside his kitchen window horizontally with a little curved mirror at the bottom and then flat mirror around the 3 and then curving again at the top. And so he can just reach out the window, slide in whatever he's cooking and make it happen. On a sidebar, Laura Mignel, who has posted on the World Network a couple times, maybe 2-3 years ago, she was going to start doing her own vacuum tube cooker making, where she would make a frame for one that she had special ordered from China, which was a 5-inch diameter tube. So it was like the Rand tube, if you remember the Rand tubes. She decided not to go into it after all, but in the meantime, she got a couple dozen of these tubes. And I won't be able to bring one of them to ACES because it'll be after ACES that I'll be visiting her, but a bunch of us are going in as a group. I see at least one other customer in the crowd here, where I'm gonna be driving half across the country with about a dozen of these tubes, driving very carefully to make sure they get to people safely. But and that's something I want to do. I want to try more like in the winter with you know, the lower sun elevation and so forth, and maybe even under cloud cover too, to see what happens. So before taking the next question, I do want to repeat what Celestino has posted in the chat. Console Foods Conference, July 12th, 13th, and 14th, Coruña, Spain. Joe and I will be there. I see at least 2 people in the crowd here who are going to be presenting. And that's going to be very interesting. Consolefood.org is the website to get more information if you have not signed up again. And I see a familiar face, Wilden. I see you turned on your camera. How are you doing?
Very well. Good to hear you, Luther. Yeah, I'll be manning the Solar Village with all the cooking on Friday afternoon at American Solar Energy Society, the 2nd week of August.
Yes.
And before that, Solar Fest is July 15th and 16th in north of Rutland, Vermont.
Oh, cool. I want to thank you so much, Wilden, because my schedule for my next video trip is such I have to leave before that the Solar Village. And thanks so much for stepping up. And I will have the 4 of my exemplary cookers that I have extras of, just for everyone's knowledge. The people who help Wilden out, or Wilden will get them all herself. You'll be able to keep them because they're extras that I have. And it's kind of my way of saying I wish I could have stayed for that. But and I'll also be doing a poster presentation summarizing what I've learned from over 100 people that I've interviewed, and just some really, you know, everyone I've talked to, there's something surprising, always something surprising. I make a note saying, why didn't I think of that? That is so cool to learn. And Wilden was one of them. Wilden, by the way, just credit in my series, talked about all 17, I think it is, of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Solar cooking meets all 17. I've seen some organizations say, well, we're distributing solar cookers, and here are like 5 or 6 of those goals that it meets. And I say, why stop there? It meets them all. So anyway, thanks again, Wilden.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm seeing a few more people have logged in. Any more questions about this particular cooker? And then we'll do a quick round of introductions and talk about what you're up to. Any last questions?
I put a question in the chat, Luther.
Okay. Oh, there you go. New message. Oh, yeah. You know, he did. Chaco did not talk much about the adoption rate or acceptance in India, but several that I have spoken with in India, they will always say, boy, we're just disappointed at how few people have adopted solar cooking. And I'm thinking that's just the universal perception, is that so few people have adopted it. And what are the challenges to make that happen? I'm thinking we might have one forum where we have 5 or 6 people that have been doing it for a long time, lessons learned, here's the stuff to not do, to make sure people really feel comfortable adopting it wherever they are. My challenge is, of course, I'm in Minnesota, it's the variety weather belt, so I can't be cooking solar every day. But I was at the state fair last fall for 10 of the 12 days. And after the second day, I'm like this, people would walk by, oh, that'd be a great survival tool, or that'd be great for camping. And I'd say, it's not just for camping anymore. Please use it every day you have sun. And I think people don't have, they don't get that. And I think some of the marketing that's going on out there, not to specify any particular cookers, but they always have them at a picnic grounds, park, or camping, not necessarily in their backyard, man. By the way, I have a guest in my home, Craig Berglund, who is one of my video guests. He's here now been here for 2 days. We've been installing some PV stuff, but also he's going to get the full tour of the museum, and we're going to try to video 4 or 5 of them at least that I have never really talked about before, to just start that series going, so people will get a picture of all the different cookers that are out there. But anyway, so this is a full solar crowd. Did that cover that? No. So as far as adoption in India, yeah. Who was it? Well, Martin Oltoff, who did that just incredible work in Nepal. 7,000 SK-14s in those 8 different refugee camps, 100,000 people being able to feed themselves for pretty much totally with the sun for 9 months out of the year, and off and on with rocket stoves for the rest of the year. Even he said, Deepak Adja, who was like the godfather of solar cooking in India, they always are talking about how it just is aggravating to see how few people adopt it, especially in the sun-rich areas. I have relatives in Albuquerque. They have like every day, but like 3 in the year, they could be cooking. They could be cooking 3 meals a day. And I gave them a cooker, and they go, oh yeah, that's right. We should probably start cooking, shouldn't we? So it's over. And here, of course, we're spoiled with the gas and the electric and so forth. But even in countries where, the people recognize, yeah, we're losing our forest because we're using it to cook with, but just that switch over to something completely different, it's a huge challenge. All right, any other questions, any other thoughts? Oh, there was one more. Okay. Challenge of electrical cooking versus thermal cooking. Actually, I have 5 individuals who are putting together campaigns to distribute PV direct to batteries and cookers. And there's a little bit of a controversy in some of the solar cooking circles. Is that really solar cooking, or is that just electrical and then it's a cooker, an electric cooker? But I want them to be able to make their pitch. 1 or 2 of them, honestly, the one guy, I won't say who, said solar thermal is dead, which I really kind of resent that, because with solar panels coming so far down in price and induction cookers, you can get an induction cooker on Alibaba for $25 or something. And that's the one guy's strategy, is just get it down to like under $100 total, where you can cook during the day, have a minimal battery backup and so forth. So I hope to have a forum with the 4 or 5 major players that are doing that right now, that have already developed theirs. In fact, that's why Craig is here, is Barry Butler in Oceanside, California. He's developed one, and he asked me to test it. He would give me one if I would test it, and I would just have to get the car battery, because it's all based on having a car battery and then everything else. And tomorrow we're supposed to have full sun, so I'll be able to finally test it. We got it installed in our garage. Little bit of self-serving, because I want to take my garage offline. I want to take it off the grid, and this is a start toward that. But anyway, so that's, yes, I want to do that. I hope to do that in the 2 weeks in July I'll have left after the conference, before the August trip to ACES and all over the West. But if not, it'll be after I get back in August. They've all pretty much agreed to attend. So, and by the way, this came up with Craig, is there are DC induction cookers. You know how people with boats, a lot of this, pretty much everything on a boat is DC. That's just the best way to go. And so a couple of these systems are actually DC cookers, which lose a lot less of the electricity from the panel to the battery, or the battery to the cooker. So that's just one thing I learned in the last few months. Did I miss anything else here? Oh, I'd like to know Indians are talking about, the different times of day. Yesterday, Craig and I had poached eggs at 9:30 in the Simplicity. So, you can do it in the morning with a parabolic. You can catch that sunrise and possibly even cook. Have relatives in Minnesota. Everyone's got their cabin up north. And Joe has 3 uncles on the same lake. And so before the 4th of July, we sometimes impose ourselves on them. The one time I went there, everyone's on vacation, right? So I had two 18-pack egg cartons. And as they woke up, hey, here's your poached egg. Here's your poached egg. Cooked in the sun. Thank you very much. Anyway.
Well, did you know that Roger's cooker and my cooker can both cook in the morning?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
was doing a demo several years ago, and it was like by 9 a.m. I put my egg in, just thinking, well, it's never going to cook, and it was totally cooked.
Yeah.
And I know how efficient Roger's is. It would do the same thing, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the myth of not being able to cook all day is something that needs to be broken, because arranging either his or my panels, they're different. I think his is a little more powerful, but we can cook all day. We can even cook when the sun's going down. And that's something that gets overlooked by the whole community.
When some of you may have seen Sarah Hjalmarsson, she's a chef in Sweden. And,
Oh, yeah.
And she's had kind of off and on starts and stops on doing more videos. But one of them is the very north end of Sweden, practically the Arctic Circle with the Simplicity. And I think of one of the GoSun vacuum tubes and just taking mussels right out of the ocean and putting them right in the cooker, kind of a dream world, but yes, so it can be done. Okay. Hello from Ohio, Jennifer. Okay, we talked about electrical. Any other last questions? Okay, well, I tell you what, I'm just gonna go as I see people in my gallery view here. I gotta make sure I show, there we go. And just call on you. Oh, I'm sorry, Atul, you have your hand up. Was that your question, or did you want to?
Yeah. Hi, Celestino. Nice to see you, Celestino, here. So the challenge, I was talking about the challenge of electrical cooking and Celestino's question of adapting solar cookers in India. It is really not only challenge in India, it is also challenge in all over the world, because there are different forces pushing different technologies. Like as I was saying about the electrical cooking, there is a major push from Europe now, particularly from Britain. The people from Labro University pushing a lot about electrical cooking, and some people from USA, you well aware with that. And despite there is a large what I can say difference between availability of electricity and cooking energy, and it is still not affordable in many developed countries, including Africa and Asian countries, and despite there is a major push. So until and unless the governments, local governments, push solar thermal cooking, how we are going to address the challenge of electrical cooking versus thermal cooking? That is my question.
Sure. One reflection on that, my conversation with Doug Danley, who has Sunspot PV, and so he's very committed to PV direct to cookers and promoting them in countries where they're deforesting and so forth. We talked a lot about that. I'm losing my train of thought here. What did he say exactly? What came up was the people he wants to get to, there is no grid. And so when he brings this to them, they have their own grid. And maybe one of the challenges is the governments, well, not to get too political, but there's some intertwining with the power companies, the gas companies and so forth. So they might not like that. They'll never be able to get those people as customers. That's one challenge, I think. But what I like about these systems is they're not just the cookers. Talking about Chaku's, it can heat the room, cook and dry. Well, this system, they're all coming with USB ports because they got to have sometimes they want to set it up so there's an inverter so you can do AC as well. And so you already have the little system there where you can charge phones, charge batteries for lights. So kids can actually get some studying done during the day. And what occurred to me when I talked to him was it solves that last mile problem. Those of you who are in business, you want to deliver something that was made in another country. It's fairly cheap to put 500 on a boat. And then when they get to the train, well, that's still kind of cheap. But it's getting to you at your farm 15 miles from Bismarck, North Dakota. That's the last mile problem. That's the most expensive part of the delivery. Well, if you can get a bunch of people, and this sounds crazy, but get a 1979 Datsun pickup truck and put 30 of these things in the back and deliver them to a village, now they have it and there's no more last mile problem because you don't have to send 59 miles of power lines there to get people on the grid, and now all of a sudden they're dependent on the grid. And we know that how that sometimes turns out. So anyway, very good questions, and it just shows how complex the problem is in promoting it, developing cookers that are appropriate, thermal versus PV and so forth. Okay, well, I'm going to go next to Sharon is next on my screen. So if you have any updates or thoughts, what do you got going right now? You always have something, I know that.
Well, right now I'm kind of relooking at my whole approach to solar cooking because I've been doing it since 1979, right?
Yes.
So I want to kind of look over my business and try to make it better. And as far as my solar cooker, I have it down just the way I want it, except for the base. I may work on manufacturing that in a simpler manner than I am right now. And so then I also got that big, I think I showed you that big red, I've 3D printed the solar
Yes.
cooker that was on, it wasn't Instructables, it was Thingiverse. And so I'm still working on that. In 10 seconds, I can burn a hole in the wood, but I have to set up something to hold the wood, and I have, all these kinds of things. Plus, I want to do the look at what point of overcast can I cook, and just try to answer those questions, because all of us around the world, we have problems with smoke, we have problems with fog, we have problems with overcast at different times. And it would be I think it'd be a good point to study and sort of put numbers to it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Sure. There must be, I know there's devices, say for photographers, they have light meters. There
Mhm.
must be some kind of light meter that'll say, here's how many watts have reached the ground, given whatever's up there, right? I mean, is that something?
Pyrometer.
It's like,
Well, I have the PEP. I made the PEP up like the same as Solar Cookers International. So I do have something I can measure it with, but I just have to get back into doing that program. And,
Sure.
Basically it's been 2 years since I touched it.
Probably when I was there, because I remember
Yeah.
the testing kit, the Alan Bigelow machine, the mad
Yeah.
scientist toolbox.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, now I see Roger next. Roger Haynes. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Luther. What am I doing? I'm still selling cookers online, as you know.
Yep.
We have a project going in Mexico with Lorena Harp. And I think that our previous Mexican projects over the last 5 years will be presented at the conference in Portugal. So there will be a presentation about that. They have a sort of a review of whether the cookers are still being used and what the factors are that result in continuous use over those 5 years. So there's a good evaluation there. I think it'll be unusual that we have a 5-year evaluation in that way. The trouble is, it's not been one project, but many and different kinds of cookers. So it's always there's always problems with any evaluation.
Sure.
But that'll be done in Celestino's program next month.
And how long have you been selling your cookers? It's been what, 6, 8 years?
Well, I'm
Seems like
embarrassed to
forever.
say, we started, like 10 years ago now. And still waiting, it's profitable. It's been profitable from the beginning, actually, but it's not like we've taken off. And I think if you talk to anybody who's selling cookers commercially right now, the sales have been off for the last year or so. And I think that may be because the whole country has got this June gloom or this overcast situation. Don't know when that'll change, but I'm looking forward to changing, and I think we'll start selling cookers again and thereafter. But we're still doing okay. I'm convinced that for the world, for especially those 2 billion people we talk about that don't have any way to cook, I'm increasingly convinced that the solution to this is carbon credits. Because carbon credits are going to be increasingly important and available over the years. And there's nothing that deserves more carbon credits than cooking with the sun. So I'm trying to put together a project for Kakuma right now. And we'll see whether that gets put together, but it looks very favorable. Unfortunately or fortunately, to deal with the carbon credits, you need to have a large project. So I'm going to go out on a financial limb and see if we can recover the money over the course of the next 5 years. But that's still being put together, and I have great hopes for it.
So I'm imagining maybe a little manual on how to apply for them and what are the criteria. Where do you go? Do I go to the feds here in the States? Do I go to the United Nations? If I'm in Botswana, do I go to the Botswana? I mean, anyway,
Luther, it's the Wild West.
Yes.
It's really amazing. You may know there's an effort by the Clean Cooking Alliance to try to get some coherence to this, or at least for the clean cooking sector. And they've set up task forces and working groups, and I'm on one of those. Maybe some of the rest of you are as well. If you're not, you should be. But it is right now the Wild West. I'm working with a broker. There are people out there who buy and sell these carbon credits, and they're taking a big risk with anything. So they're also not going to give you much because they're taking a big risk. So there we are. But it needs to be regularized. Everybody's talking about it, but it's a very tough field right now.
Maybe with volume, I think of like Scott Rundle or Sharon. I mean, where you've had a going concern selling for quite a while. But maybe what if you're like, a couple hundred units short of what they want to see happen? Can you Roger, you Sharon, Scott Rundle, anyone else, can you kind of band together and I don't know, not a benevolent merger, not a hostile takeover.
Luther, the problem is that they want the kitchen performance test with a cooker and a population. And so you're doing random samples of a population. Refugee camps are best because they have a sort of uniform population. But apart from that, it's really tough. If you're not going to sample every cooker, then you are doing a random sample, and you got to show that your sample is indeed representative of the group.
It sounds like when I looked at the Inflation Reduction Act to see what kind of credit I would get for a heat pump, and apparently that's income based, whereas everything else it's 30% credit, right, for batteries and so forth. So, and I think that's why people don't even look into it, is they just imagine these complexities and the hurdles in the way. So, but definitely you'll be one that I'll want to have on that. If we do the forum with like 5 or 6 that have done extensive promotions, and that's I agree with you, because the big gorilla that can get these things done is often the government agencies, and they're saying they're doing some of the brokering with the companies that need to get what tax credits bought, because they're the ones causing the carbon problem, right? Well, next on my screenshot here is Kurt. Kurt
Henry's
Newbeck.
got a question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just thinking about the carbon credits. If you have a broker who is engaging into carbon credits with this group of systems, that person is, or that company is, somebody we need to support. And maybe if you could maybe suggest that they publish some articles, maybe it's in ACES Solar Today, an article about that kind of carbon trading that can do something with solar cookers, will do something with other solar thermal. And it might be good to try to convince them. It would help their business, because I mean, I'm involved in solar thermal monitoring, where we monitor performance for solar systems for companies who are trying to sell their carbon credits, and they have a hell of a time finding brokers. So that PV, much easier, biomass, easier, solar thermal collectors on buildings, not very easy. And I would think solar cookers, way hard. So I think if you have somebody that's we should try to support them, which would then support the solar cooker industry as well.
Well, thanks for that too, because the ACES has it's daily. I get a daily digest anyway of all sorts of discussions on these, and people can announce stuff. I've posted occasionally in my channel to try to generate some interest, but we really gotta crowd into that a solar thermal people to get that known. Okay, well, let's see. I said, Kurt, if you have anything new going on, I'll be happy to see you on the beach there in about a month or so. No, 2 months.
Yeah, I hope it's in a month. I'm not ready.
Yes. 2 months. Yeah, let's get that right. August.
Yeah, a couple things I'll mention that. Well, first of all, I so appreciate having this community, this group of people who gets together and a chance to just chat like this. And it's been probably 6-8 weeks maybe. I was in San Diego, and so I sent a note to Roger saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in San Diego." Roger Haynes, and so he got Barry Butler and Roger Davenport together, and so we had lunch, and it was just delightful. And I don't think we solved anything, but the opportunity to connect and talk about things at a very deep technical level was, there aren't that many people around the world you can have that conversation with. So I so appreciate that. And so Luther, thank you for perpetuating that and for starting this, perpetuating it. I'm continuing some, just last night I mentioned, and today I've been working on kind of my next generation of boxes to do some tests with. But the other one that I want to get done before and I'll say, if anyone wants to join us there's a big annual sandcastle competition in Galveston, Texas, coming up in August on the beach, and I'll be doing for the third year solar cooking demo. And I don't know, I didn't hear the final numbers, but there must be 25,000 people on the beach who walk by. It's just an incredible opportunity to be a part of, to get the solar cookers in front of people. So I have a wide range up there. But where I was going, the thing that I'm hoping to get done before then, Luther, is there's a friend of, I'm in Texas. So a friend said to me that jokingly, when I was telling him about solar cooking, he joked, "Yeah, but can you smoke a brisket with it?" We're in Texas, it's kind of the stereotypical thing. So I thought, okay, challenge accepted. So I'm building myself a solar smoker to smoke a brisket in. And I already got some of the components, and I got to get it built, and I want to get I'm going to start with a manual reflector on there, but back to your point earlier, Luther, it's just I'm starting with just a simple kind of a small portable tabletop barbecue, like a barrel on its side with a lid, and then I'm putting a big trough reflector on there, so there won't be any glass, there won't be any insulation, just heat that sucker up and get it to 300 degrees inside. It should work. Just need enough reflectors.
Sure.
So
You know,
that's what I'm working on.
if you caught my interview with the Bjorn Korn people in New York,
Yeah.
Bronx in New York, where Jamie O'Shea has a trough reflector just built into the ground, just a straight trough reflector, and then a stainless steel tube that he just needs to put a motor and an auger on the other end. He's going to pour coffee beans in the one end, and they're roasted at the other end. And he just had to decide, okay, mild roast, open the hatch early. Dark roast, open the hatch at the end. And I think he's onto something really cool there, because the focal line that's across the bar is always, he's got the reflector position, so it doesn't really even matter where the sun is. So that might be thought. Another reflection is Pat McCardle knows of a chef in Washington, DC, I believe, who uses a sun oven on the roof of his restaurant. And he has just one of these electric smokers that they use in the restaurants to just get the smoky flavor to something quick, rather than the slow and low and slow like you do with brisket originally, but then smoking it at the same time. So and I've always thought that Fresnel lens cookers, Fresnel lenses might be the ticket for that sort of thing, because you could actually get the smoke from apple wood or whatever you want to use for smoking, so it can make it totally solar. But anyway, no, that sounds cool. I can't wait to see what you get. You always have something up your sleeve. This is great. Okay, next I see Celestino. We got to hear from Celestino.
Yes, my friend. Here, it's 5 p.m. And it's time for making a solar coffee. Do you know what is a solar coffee? Who knows what is a solar coffee?
Oh, Matt West appears to know. Need to unmute.
It's unmute.
It's
Can you hear me?
probably, you're talking about, I don't know if I'm saying it the right way, but Karana, like a thermos type thing, a drinking thing, solar karepi.
Coffee.
Well,
Coffee.
I'm not sure, but
Coffee, it's a what drink that I prepare twice or 3 times per day in my solar cooker. Coffee is a mixture of carrot powder and coffee powder.
I drink
I
at
have
Celestino's house.
I have 3 trees of carrot, giving me 100 kilos per year. In July and September, I use 3 box cookers to dry the carrots strongly. Then I mill the carrots and I make the powder. Then with the powder, I make solar cakes for the conference, for the friends. I make solar bread with the carrot, and I make the instantaneous solar coffee. So just 3 minutes in the Italian coffee maker. So if you can now, I will make 3 Italian coffee makers in 15 minutes for you. You are welcome.
All right, that sounds great. Well, no, we did hear a bunch from Henry, but Henry, if you have anything more, you're the next on my array of the screen here.
So I'm just looking for something that's a little bit hotter. We use a Tulsi cooker out on our porch whenever the sun is above the buildings across the street, which means, the swing seasons in summer. But I want to see more like the Fresnel kind of cookers and things that have more than one sun, from reflectors, but that are safe, that don't have the potential of either blinding or burning issues. So that I'm kind of a little bit limited with time, but that's what my next cooker would be, to do some kind of a safe Fresnel wall mounted or something like that.
Good point. Get to my channel, find my interview with Bing Gu,
Mhm.
California Sunlight in Sacramento. He has my assessment, and I think I'm right, the only completely safe Fresnel lens cooker, a 32-inch lens and a 42-inch lens, self-contained with just basically an aluminum body that's like a quarter of a dime. I don't know how to describe it. It sends the focal point to a hole that at the other end you put a box cooker for an oven, or you can put something in the boil kettle for water. You can fry tortillas. There's a video of him online as well at some fair, I think, or in a park in Sacramento, where he has 6 of them in a row, and each one has its own attachment. And because it's self-contained with this aluminum reflector inside, that focal point will never stray, you know, and burn one of your fair goers' ankles as they walk by.
So I want a little bit of storage, enough so that I can have it be like a pizza cooker, you know, so that.
Yeah, you know, maybe a larger.
Or chapati cooker, you know, that way.
Oh, there we go.
That's an example of the Fresnel I'm working on. It's like called the Rings of Fire.
Uh-huh.
And we're actually going to make it so that it can be portable, and it goes together with puzzle pieces, and it's laser cut. So that's how we get the angles for it. I don't know if you can see that very well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's another one of the things I'm going to work on. And you can use that, or you can use you know, like a TV, the DVD dish.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've cooked coffee and stuff on that, and it's one of my little projects.
just trying to do it without burning the house down.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the focal point is 18 inches directly underneath the pan.
Yeah.
And it swings in, you know, in the little it's kind of like a little carriage. So it swings, and you can turn the cooker around, or you can you know, swing it back and forth for the height of the sun.
Here, and that's the Fresnel reflector, so it's effectively a parabolic, just with the reflector.
Yeah, it's a Fresnel reflecting up, not going down.
Yeah. Well, cool. Okay, next up I have Wilden. If Wilden's got any more that, how are things in the Bronx? Is the smoke clearing out?
Yeah, the smoke is pretty much gone. We're back down to some 21 parts per million. So it was bad there on Wednesday. It was dark green from 11 until 3. And then they finally said, you know, New York was the world's worst in the whole world, but then New Delhi was higher. And to think that folks live like that all the time. New Yorkers are pretty sensitive, and we feel, you know, that, yeah, we had a bad day, but
Sure.
That was a little much. So yeah, sure. You know, I'm just kind of an advocate for y'all, and I enjoy solar cooking immensely. But I think, yes, you're right about how to get that last mile. And I think Dr. Kopp, who did the PV out in the villages, he said, you know, that 80 miles from there, they don't have wires going out that far. So we do need to jump the shark, as they say. Thanks, Luther.
Sure. And having visited my wife's family in Panama and Costa Rica, there's a grid, but you know, pretty much everyone guarantees we just get ready for the power to go out at 6 p.m. every day. I mean, they just whatever happens, it isn't reliable. So when you got your own system and you take care of it, it'll be as reliable as you are, you know. So yeah. Next, and Matt West, good to see you again. And it looks like you've got some project you're in your backyard, or is that on your screen? What's going on there?
Well, this is on my screen. I just wanted to show it because it's the absolute simplest thing I've been able to come up with. As you know, I started making solar cookers with disused items, is what Tom Sponheim said about it. And I thought, you know, yeah, that's why wouldn't you? You know, why wouldn't you turn a barbecue grill into a cooker? And why wouldn't you turn a big free freezer and a free glass door into a huge cooker just for the heck of it, just for the sake of experimentation? But this sucker right here is deadly. I don't know how long I should have cooked a roast yesterday, but it started out too big to, well, kind of one edge was hanging over a ceramic bowl I cook in a lot, which you can see it, you know, inside that glass, that's where it is. And I left it in there from, you know, I made a point of moving the cooker into the early sun. So I started cooking at like 10 o'clock, and by 4 or 5 o'clock, the thing was overcooked, kind of tough. And it's just could be more simple. And I'd like to see some promotion of it, just because, well, the affordability. Kitty has decided to join in. Hi, Kitty. I'll turn it back this way. So I've always wanted to see people stick it to the man. You know, you're not going to sell me oil. You're not going to sell me gas. This is not Native American. This is not, this world we live in is unnatural, overly industrial. We like to do gadgets, but you know, there's all these, solar cooking has been so overlooked because, and I was watching, all of you probably like Cosmos. They were talking about the man Marshall, maybe, who did a demonstration in 1885, and he's making steam, using a big parabola to make steam, to make refrigeration. So anyway, for me, it's always been about what is the absolute simplest, therefore successful. And also, one of the first lessons I learned in art school was simplicity tends to be the essence of good design. And I'll never forget that, you know, and I always see that. And this cooker I showed you is not exactly glamorous. Not that it couldn't be, though. I haven't, you know, hadn't been in existence for very long. So I haven't taken the time to put all the little doodads on it for want, like straps and buttons or whatever you want to do for fasteners and adjusters. But you really don't need much. You can tilt the back panel for sunrise and sunset and get started cooking very early. And so I was thinking, you know, I've seen all the Copenhagen's and Pete's, and I thought, why don't I just wad up a, you know, wad this into the shape of a cupcake, or stick it in a bucket like I did with my big pot, big flower pot thing. And I have been tempted to cut 1/3 of the side of it off so sunlight could get in, but I also want to be able to aim that reflector, you know. But then again, I also think a lot of people, not us necessarily, but even us, can sometimes forget that we're not going to be cooking 16 hours a day. As a matter of fact, we might only be cooking for 2 hours or 3. So that's cool. And Matteo Muccioli just recently added taller reflectors to his kimono, and around his yogurt thing cake better, you know. So what all of you have been doing is working toward also things that are marketable and things that are just easy to provide to people in a desperate situation. So right now, I am loving the storage bin cooker. It is just too simple. And I can make them different ways. I want the front door to be able to hinge, so I can change the angle and leave the back reflector where it is, because 3 stable sides is better than 4 open ones like I some of you may know I made recently, which gets kind of floppy, and actually the wind tore one of the things off. So this 3-wall storage cooker is the kind of thing you could ship a whole, you just put a lid on it. You can even put dotted lines on it or whatever you need to do. And when it gets where it's going, if you want to help refugees and stuff, it could be full of cookware. It could have everything you need to get solar cooking, including some food products all stuck in it. Or, you know, surely this material is available everywhere, and or something like it. The great thing about the material is it has this structure of its own. You know, we try, oh, I want glass reflectors, but I hadn't got around to figuring out whether I want to mount them to plywood, and the plywood is going to go rotting out in the weather. All these questions we've all grappled with and heard other people working with. So anyway, right now I'm in love with the storage bin cooker and probably carried on way too much. So,
Well, I gotta say, when I visited Matt, the thought occurred to me, some of us have had conversations where we say we have this condition called solaritis, where we see something and we say, can I make a solar cooker out of that? Well, Matt has it bad. It has, and he turns them all into solar cookers. So repurposing things that maybe weren't so energy conscious, you know, the right kind of fuel source or whatever, turning into solar cookers. So that's fantastic. Thanks so much, Matt. I'm seeing next
well,
on
I
my
think,
screen. Yeah.
this one could get very popular due to the fact you don't have to build anything. You're cutting and just cutting.
Yep.
You cut the material. You can turn it over when if it starts to degrade.
Sure.
And if you don't leave it outside, it won't degrade for a long time.
I'm trying to remember if I left a copy of that book with you, the great book of maker ideas, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
A guy named Chris Hackett in Brooklyn, by the way, Wilden. He had a popular science brief video series where he did all sorts of things with found objects. And what Matt has done is Chris Hackett says the most common element on the planet, it's called obtainium. Obtainium. Found stuff. I have an alley in Minneapolis here where every 3 or 4 months, oh man, I finally got a welder because of all the bed frames that were dumped, all the bikes that were trashed, and I'm going to make art out of them. Doggone it. But anyway, thanks, Matt. And I see Jennifer joined us and from Ohio. Are you still in Ohio? It looks like you're probably in your.
I am. Today is spraying the back of your solar cooker day so your neighbors don't complain anymore. That's what I was doing. And I should have been solar cooking, but every time I turn my ovens around to the rear, they're still reflective. The metal ones, obviously aluminum.
Yep.
So I sprayed the back of everything that I could, and my neighbors are waving at me as we speak. Like, good job, Jennifer. They're over there doing this, and I have an 1.5 acres of property, and it does still reflect the whole way back through the yard. So anyway, good to see everyone. I'm sorry I was late, but I had a few things I had to do this morning. One of which was, Roger, I sent you an email. What are we doing? We're getting ready for console. And Celestino, our paper might be just a little bit late, but we're coming. We're waiting on some data, and we're over our head with the video editing process. So we're working on it. We're doing STEM through impact schools in our community. That we have one great community school that is like, I'll call it a magnet school back in my day. And they are doing wonderful things, and they would like to make their own solar cooker and building to store it in. And every year they will make it in such a way that they assemble, each group is the brand new class coming in, will assemble that solar cooker and assemble the building. And then they will disassemble it before winter and put the materials away so that they continually reuse. That's their effort to sustainability, that they want the kids to know how to do that and why the processes are such that you have to know how to assemble them. So they said, if we just assemble something every year and leave it that way, the kids will never learn how it went together and how it is. So very interesting project. We're going to do a demonstration and talk to them, but they are also a part of our video, which is why we're a little late on that. What else? Quick reference pictorial. I think Roger and Lorena certainly know what that project's about, is really kind of simplifying things and trying to get to the essence of what we need to be solar cooks. And let's see, working on a base, Sharon, Roger, for all my reflective panels, if anybody knows me, I keep my cookers outside. I don't, put them away, and every night they come in. I'm using a 3-degree swivel and 2 pieces of balsa wood to create a base that I can then attach each cooker to, because all of the reflective panel cookers have certain things in common. And the 360-degree swivel, I can lock it in place. We're good. And I could even add a tilt if I wanted to for adjustment for sunlight. So that's on my list. I'm about halfway through that, and the swivel selection, the bigger the swivel, the better. So like a bar stool swivel works really well. My personal quest is to get solar cookers off the ground. So eventually I think some of this will go to a table where I'll have this mount attached to the table, or several of them attached to the table, and then I can use it directionally as well. What else? Oh, our Hubbard Public Library. Many of you know that our local library has a lending program, and they lend solar cookers. So we have really been instrumental in trying to have people be aware that that exists. Please check it out. The people in the school, the teachers use it, the homeschool parents use it. And it has really become, that we know of, it's the only one in existence. And I would encourage all of you within your communities to take it to the library and see what they think of that. You can mention the Hubbard Public Library as the example, but I have to work and help them on the return of investment of that, grant, and defend it and the shelf space it's using and utilizing. But it has been, it's not something that's going to take off overnight, but our library, it was actually their idea. We did no convincing. We were at the farmers market, they saw us and came forward and said, we think this would work as a lending tool. And so we jumped in. And those are the major projects.
Sure. I remember when I was there, they had a pretty good camel's nose in the tent. They first offered ukuleles to check out.
They did.
And of course, that was COVID. Just the vaccine had already come out, but I think, right? And
right.
So you could check out ukuleles, and I thought this must be some ukulele mobster thing in Ohio where that happens to be, but something to make it so it's not just one thing, and then they can know, hey, we got space. 3/4 of the books are probably in the basement, and they can figure it out. So I think that's one of the best ways to get it out there, because it's, people do still use libraries. And
well, one of the best synergies we had with them is they were working on an outdoor walking space for celestial things for their telescope. And we said, well, can't we change that tour for a daytime walking tour and do it with the angles of the sun, angles of incidence, and put a solar cooker in there, and they can use the same space at night for the celestial, take the telescope out, and during the day do it for solar cooking. So we've just found same thing, a lot of connections, and the answers to those are solar cookers.
Sure. Well, great. We only have a couple left that I see on my screen, and one I hope we can do a video thing, if not actually visit. Lorena, did I hear right? You're in Mexico. We'd love to do a forum with you directly sometime. We've done folks from India, and Martin Olthoff was over in the Netherlands when we had a wonderful conversation with him. So if Lorena, if you're on and you would like to chime in, welcome to unmute and tell us what you're up to. Or not. maybe getting coffee, like some Zoom calls I'm in where I'm not the host. I mute, turn off the camera, go get coffee. Okay, well, in that case, the last person, and I feel like Bill O'Reilly, Bob Metcalf, will give you the last word.
Just for historical purposes, I'd like to mention that on June 20th, back in 1978, that's when I received a wooden solar box cooker from Barbara Kerr and Sherry Cole. And so, this is, and started solar cooking seriously. So this will be 45 years of solar cooking that, just in a week or so. And I was also thinking that, well, and after that, I bought a box from them, a wooden one, which was really the first one that they gave to California.
Afternoon, whatever it is.
But then they started making, these Barbara Kerr and Sherry Cole started making in a warehouse that somebody loaned them these eco cookers, which were cardboard solar box cookers. Sherry Cole would put the glass into the lid and pack it up and send me these boxes. I was a volunteer distributor for that. And it was because then people could get those. And quite often I had students assemble them. It'd take about 2 hours to glue all the pieces together and get it going. But there are about 1,000 of these eco cookers that were distributed in the 1980s that got solar cookers. Sacramento was a solar cooking capital then. And that one of the, and recently, if you have been in the United States on PBS, there's been a program about Maria Telkas, who was a solar pioneer for doing a lot of very good solar things. Although the solar cooker she had was a slant faced with 4 panels on it, which is really hard to make there. There should be a PBS special on the legacy of Barbara Kerr and her friend Sherry Cole, because without the hundreds of people in Sacramento that then were regularly cooking, as I will be today, in a beat up 35-year-old cardboard solar box cooker outside, that there would be no Solar Cookers International. And Solar Cookers International then led to, with Barbara Kerr suggesting also, when the Transforming Cook It came out in the, developed in 1995, that, oh, you need a clear plastic bag instead of glass. That's how to do that. And she really needs to be, Barbara Kerr and Sherry Cole and all the things that they did, never getting any money from the things, but their enthusiasm. They were among, as I was too, founders of Solar Cookers International, and that they really need to be honored in some ways. And but a couple of things about today, I can't understand the concept of trying to decrease the volume of a solar cooker. Air has 0 specific heat. Okay, so in my box cooker, I'm cooking chicken, rice, vegetables today. I'll take off the lid. Okay, the air temperature drops, but not the food temperature. So don't worry about this, don't worry about whether it's, cubic feet of air. You put the lid back on and the air temperature will go up again, but there's nothing about that. And the other thing I learned from very beginning is don't try to oversell solar cooking. You've got, wherever you are, you've got a solar season. And in Sacramento, 38 degrees above the equator, it's from mid-March to mid-October. And particularly at those times, we're going to have great sun angles. Today, our maximum sun angle is over 70 degrees. And then, but in December, the summer winter solstice, it's 28 degrees. And yes, I have cooked rice on a sunny day then, but I can't cook a full meal. So don't try to oversell it. Don't try to have it so that on poor solar days or poor solar days during the outside of the solar season, that, oh, you can also solar cook. No, remote solar cooking. We've always done that here in Sacramento. Promote it during our solar season. Today, we can solar cook. Tomorrow we'll solar cook. You know, we're not like up in the Northwest then. We don't get a lot of clouds there. And so I think that's important. But also when you think about solar cooking around the world, okay, and the projects that I'm still supporting in Kenya then with the Cook It solar cooker in Kenya. And when I've been there, many times, there isn't a seasonal variation in the amount of sunshine you have. It's almost around 12 hours a day, and the sun by 6 o'clock, it's gone. And so if you're thinking about bringing solar to the equator or within say 15 degrees of the equator, you also must include a fireless cooker, an insulated basket that our friends Faustine, Dina Odaba, and Dina Chenja always then include with a solar cooker project, because you're not going to be cooking, after about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but you don't want to eat then. So you take the hot pot, you put it in an insulated basket, cover it up, and then if you want to eat at 7 or 8 o'clock, it's ready to cook. And so those are just a couple of observations that I had. And again, that it comes out to 45 years of solar cooking in Sacramento, although today in Sacramento, it's invisible. And so, and without having those cardboard box cooker kits to sell, and then that it has disappeared. But you got to go back to history then, where we had hundreds of solar box cookers in front of the state capitol in 1991, when we had our celebration there, and also showing people how they could make box cookers from scrap cardboard and aluminum foil and making a glass like that. But anyway, 45 years of serious solar cooking on June 20th, and I'll be doing a lot of solar cooking there. But let's also, in the roots, that Barbara Kerr and Sherry Cole, they were the catalyst to get everything going. That is, leads very likely to lots of us learning about solar cooking.
Well, thanks for that, Bob. That was great. I got to say, I had the summer is, of course, the best time to promote it. And I have my solar brunches in the backyard in the summer. I did have one in March when it reached 50 degrees and we had piles of snow over our garden, and it was very successful. I do have to say that at my time at the state fair last August and through Labor Day, 10 days, and people would walk by the Sun Oven Villager and the Haynes and the Simplicity, Copenhagen, whatever I had distributed. And one of the first things they'd say is, I bet you can't cook in the winter. And what struck me was, yes, you can cook in the winter, and people are going to just use that to not solar cook at all. Oh, because you can't cook in the winter, or, you can't cook in the late afternoon. Well, you can if you grab that sun in the summer and so forth. And it's overcoming some of those objections. Maybe it's futile, but I do insist on that. My favorite was, it was always, well, that'd be great for camping, or that'd be great for survival. And I'm saying it's not just for survival or survival of the planet. Yeah. So I think it'd be great if we had it'd probably take 50 pages, but all the objections to solar cooking and the response. The guy at Soul Foods 2020 cooking up in the Yukon, and I cooked a full meal that it could have fed 4 in the Simplicity in February, 20 below on a snowbank. It would have fed 4, except I wanted it all for myself, and I ate it all myself. Brunch for 4 people. That's just a problem I got. But anyway.
But I still think, don't try to oversell it. Yeah, okay, it's not going to cook in the wintertime, and you don't need your air conditioner in the wintertime then too,
Right,
so
right.
use it when the sun is there, and your solar season then might be from April through, 1st of October. And also I tell people, when's the best time to solar cook? Well, go out at noon, solar noon on a day. And if your shadow is your length or less, that's great solar cooking. That's a great solar cooker time. But if your shadow is, twice your length, you're not going to get very much. You're not going to get very much solar energy and be able to do a lot of cooking. So my thing is never try to I put it away. From mid-October, we start to get shade then from that, and it's also getting lower sun angles then. But I'll bring it out again in March, and then we're ready to go. And now, oh my gosh, the over 70-degree sun angles every day that we get here. This is the time to use it. Just like you don't use your winter stuff in the summertime. Use it when it's going to be when you're going to be successful. And I can't, with a 28-degree sun angle in December, I can maybe cook rice, but I won't cook potatoes. I won't be able to cook beans then. So don't try to oversell it, but sell it when it really works. And you've got great sun angles now. When it works, when the sun is terrific like that, then you don't have to, heat up your house. You don't have to burn charcoal and increase, carbon dioxide like that. Put it on early. Don't worry about overcooking, and the foods taste great.
I'm maybe just the ornery Minnesotan. And when someone says you can't do it in the winter, I got to tell them, yes, you can. And I've got to say, when I have my SK14, I got to say this, the SK14 January, roasting coffee beans, doing a full pot of stew that we put on the table in January in Minnesota. Not everyone's going to cook in the winter. I don't cook as much in the winter as I do in the summer, and I don't, in Minnesota, to overcome objections, you got to kind of do that little oversell. You got to tell them, no, you can't be thinking that way. I mean, I got to say it. It's, I do it. You can do it in the winter. You maybe need more reflector to catch that lower sun. Our sun is even lower than in Sacramento in the winter. So anyway, I just gotta put that out there.
Our differences, but
yeah.
Anyway, when I can solar cook my meals, I'll do it. But when I can't, try to, bake. It's very hard to bake hard things in the wintertime. So my strategy for 45 years is don't try to oversell it. Use it when your solar window is there, and then put it away. But you take it out again next year because the sun's going to be there next year, and the year after, and the year after in our solar season.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I know Jim LaJoy, our friend, he cooks, he makes sure to cook every New Year's Day. And of course, we're at 33 degrees here, but it can be done. And I think that it's important for people to know that if you arrange your cooker just right, it can be done. And that's one of the things I'm trying to fight, is the idea that you can't cook early in the morning, you can't cook late at night, and you can't cook in the winter, because I've proven it wrong. Jim's proven it wrong. Celestino has proven it wrong. And usually I don't stand up and say anything, but that's the truth.
And Alan Bigelow has me cooking in my giant dining room window, which on December 21st, I got sunlight going through all the way to the hallway, 4 feet into the hallway, through the dining room and out. So I saw him use a sun oven and pull out a tray full. He was in his dining room. And we're at 54 degrees in New York. He's up in Nyack, a little bit north of me.
We're not at 54, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, because
42 at my place in Vermont.
45.
45 in New York.
Yeah. Washington, D.C. is 38.
8, 40, 50. I'm not at 50 in New York.
No.
In New York City.
Well, being in New York, you can be whatever you want.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry, I had.
Don't forget, we sort of stick down, you know, we're not the regular New York. We're the part that sticks in the Atlantic Ocean,
That's right.
mouth of the Hudson. All right, be that as it may.
Well, I'm gonna give one last shot. If Lorena, if you have come back from your espresso break out on the piazza or any last shots there. But Roger, you said you're working with Lorena down there in Mexico. Maybe just a little more on that.
Yes, I think Lorena's problem is that she's not, she's very good in written English, but maybe a little harder in spoken English. So she's doing great work down there. She's been distributing cookers for over 5 years, probably more than that. She started out with what's the name of that cooker anyhow?
The hot pot?
The hot pot, yes.
Yep.
And lately been using my cooker. So we have great relationship with Lorena. And I know she's going to make a presentation at Celestino's event next month. So yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, she'll say what she's going to say.
Sure.
She's doing great work.
Well, and my wife grew up in Latin America and she's fluent in Spanish. And I want to get to like Juana Maria down there in Mexico, down there in the Chiapas area where she does the solar cheese drying and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to need Joe's help to get through it. But I think I'm going to start scheduling people south of our border to get them the well-deserved exposure for the great work that they're doing. I'm so blessed that we've had India, Africa, the Netherlands, you know, being able to zoom in and I want to make this a weekly thing. And by the way, for those that aren't aware, last Wednesday, I retired from my day job. So you can guess what I'll be doing a lot more of during the day. That's why Craig Berglund is here. We're doing 4 days. We have been out in the sun 4 days, 2 days, and it looks like our rain forecast was wrong. So we'll be able to do some more today and tomorrow full sun too. So anyway, well, I guess unless there's anything left to say, there always is. And you know, any last items, let me know. And you can email me and I can share with those that have attended. I keep track of who's made it, so I can, because there are several I know that have said, well, I've been trying to make it, but whatever technical difficulties, and I just want to make sure they know when this is posted that they will have it. Let people know, and I'll post it on the World Network and to my email list that tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central Daylight Time here in Minneapolis, Chicago time zone. This will be the conversation will be repeated, and we'll have whoever's attends then will be able to have Q&A as well, and both of them will be appended into one thing that I'll put on my channel, so everyone will have a chance to see the whole presentation, Q&A, get to know you folks and so forth. So let people know. Okay, any last items?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have pulled up some other pictures on the computer. Now, this is what really changed things for me a lot, was realizing the value of the thermal chamber. What are we calling these things?
A heat trap.
Heat trap. Okay, and this is what I've been calling a thermal stack. So that's Pyrex plus microwave plate plus ceramic plus a lid plus a big cake cover. This has very much improved my solar cooking, this type of thing, making a chamber. Here's a fish tank. And it's the first time I saw anybody use a fish tank, and maybe here I have the fish tank upside down. But it turns out I can flip the fish tank over and put a couple of sheets of old window glass on it, tied together. I have a couple that close it up and stop the airflow, which, as we are learning, is more important, is just so important. However, it doesn't have to be perfect. And this particular cooker is the one that took a beating in the wind. So I have put a drawstring around it and lost one of the ends because I want to cook long ways generally. However, this is quite effective. in making a thermal chamber. And yeah, it can take the thing. We have a lot of people say things like, well, if I put the lid on a jar, is it going to blow up? It's never happened to me once. To begin with, I used to put holes in the lids. Here's the simplest setup I've ever come up with. It's just a piece of Reflectix and a bowl with a cookie tin lid painted black for a heat target. And then on top of that is sitting a jar of coffee. And that is a baking bag I made. Instead of putting the food in the bag, I made the bag into a tent. And I think that's going to help a lot of people. And, but I have some more things to mention about that. I used to hang up solar cooking I was using this big old thing right here for years, and I couldn't move it. So I just waited for sun to hit it and waited for sun to go off of it. So I was sort of trained to only cook from 11 to 4. But now that I made this parabola thing back in about 2008, and I found it troublesome and too much aiming, and not everybody can afford a motorized solar tracker. So then I started experimenting with like reflectors finally after 15 years. And as you can see, the big oven doesn't have any reflectors. Well, it didn't need any reflectors to get to 250 because it's so darn big and insulated and more or less sealed off, drafty. You know, sometimes we overemphasize, you know, we want a vacuum sealed super box, like something like a little submarine, and we wanted it to build pressure. Well, what I have really embedded in my mind now is that is a pressure cooker. That little jar right there is a pressure cooker. So right now in my big solar oven, just for the heck of it, I have a jar of pinto beans I put in there before I went to bed. And I figure by 4 o'clock, they may be ready to eat, which is a big deal to poor people like in Mexico. And then if you want to make rice, of course, you have to ventilate it. So, you know, we've all had to learn how to cook and how to solar cook as we went along. But I really love this cooker because it just destroys food. You know, I cooked a roast yesterday to where it was very much smaller than what I originally put in there, and probably end up becoming soup and other things. But I have made it that were extremely tender this way. And also what I was trying to say before was I used to give up on solar cooking at the end of September, or, you know, I used to not even, I had learned from box cooking is what I'm saying. Box cooking without enough reflectors and without a chamber like that inside is, you know, had me to where, okay, I'm giving up on solar cooking from October to March, all the way to April. But now with this reflector cooking in the thermal chamber, it's just all year long as there's sun. And also it's very easy to tilt the thing so that you, and I'm going to make improvements, but it's very easy to tilt these things so that they can catch that morning sun. And I've been cooking in the morning and later at night. So, you know, this thing is rough looking. I get that. I know it, but it can be made to look better. And it's just super effective. You can have a big old reflector stick out if you want to, or flip and switch them based on the sun's position. And if you look at this picture, once you get this thing aimed right and lots of light on it, it starts to glow. There's this beautiful glow that comes from it. I don't know how to explain it, but you just have to see it and experience it. And people need to feel the hot food, the hot containers. They need to get burnt by it.
Yeah.
And they need to, you know, it's like art. Art might hurt you if you're not careful sometimes. Watch that thing, you know, has sharp points. But anyway, I just think this is something that can expand a whole lot, but it's almost worth nothing without the chamber.
Yep.
You know, this thermal target chamber, double insulated thing, all developed.
Well,
And
so Matt, I gotta ask you, Matt, I'll be doing a lot of time in Texas in my August video road trip.
come on down.
So
Come on down.
I gotta see how we can knit Temple, Texas in there and fit one more Texan. In fact, what's really crazy is I've been trying to get a whole bunch of people that have done solar cooking in El Paso to commit to any time, and I've actually put a 3-day window, and I haven't heard back from any of them yet. Fortunately, it's on the way to Albuquerque where I got relatives, but anyway, and what I've done in the chat, I'm gonna hit that right now, is my channel, so you can look up Matt's many cookers. We must have covered 4 or 5 at least when we were there. Shrimp, or the time-lapse photograph, you think you got to cook shrimp real fast. Well, that's how chefs do it, because you got to serve shrimp fast in the restaurant, but you can cook it slow and it's perfectly fine. It doesn't kill it. But anyway, so
Well,
on that note, we'll wrap it up, because I know people are starting to go on to get out to their cookers and get some things done for the rest of the day. But thanks everyone for joining in, and great conversation, all sorts of information exchanged. I'm thinking of the past 4 or 5 forums where we made some connections, like Roger and the Rotaries there with the Nepal outfit and their local Rotary folks. Some great things can happen just from people talking, just from people getting connected. That's the whole point. So thanks. I'm going to end the meeting for all, but really appreciate it and hope you can come back for the next ones, which I hope will be before we head to Council of Foods in July. We got at least 2 or 3 more Saturdays. So thanks again. Have a good day.